Well, good morning. You're listening to the Poetry and Prose Project on Mellow Mountain Radio, 106.5 FM and 780 AM. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Gary Every, and our special guest today is really rather unique. He's both a poet and a magician. Thank you for being here today, Roger.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, yes. My actual name is Roger Blakiston, but my stage name as a magician is Jolly Roger, just so you know that.
And so that means that you have a different stage name for poetry and for your magic.
No, yeah, Roger Blakiston definitely for my poetry, and then Jolly Roger. Whether I'm doing shows for adults or children, everyone knows me as Jolly Roger.
And you were, when we were setting up the mics and warming up here a little bit, you were telling some wonderful stories about your beginnings in showbiz, which go back quite a ways. You started as an actor, but how did you drift into being a magician?
Yes, well, I did. It was probably more my mother than anybody else who decided, well, there's no way you can make a living as a magician, so why don't you become an actor? So I went off to drama school, both in Birmingham, England, and you can tell I'm from England, right, from this fairly distinctive accent, I imagine, Gary. Yeah, so I went to drama school, and I did like sort of 3 years between the two drama schools. Then I worked for a couple of years in repertory theatre, and then I was offered a job out in Lido di Jesolo, Italy, near Venice, as a compere, they call it in England, which is actually an MC, I believe they say in America, although compere is correct because we're an older nation, the British. So, and anyway, so I worked as a compere, and I actually did 3 summer seasons where I presented this barbecue evening where they had like chicken and chips and unlimited wine, and I presented the whole thing, got on stage, I had Italian folklore dancers and singers and stuff, and it was a big hit, and I loved it. And then after the 3 years of that, I decided, well, maybe I need to just make a living as a magician, doing sort of MC work. But I didn't want to be your average magician. So what I did was I actually did an act with a 12-foot skeleton whose name was Arthur, and basically I would walk on stage and recite from Shakespeare, and all these things would go wrong, like a bird would fly out of the book, and dust would come out of the book, and the skeleton it was all, basically the gag was that I was down to skeleton staff, which is like a little crazy. But so I did this act, and as a result of doing this act, I got on a television show in England called New Faces, which is a bit like your... what do you call it? Your America's Got Talent. So I did this New Faces show, and as a result of that, I got offered a job on a cruise ship. My first time to America, and I was worked for 7 months, cruising from New York City to Bermuda, doing like 5 different magic acts, including the skeleton act. So that was it. You must shut me up because I talk a lot, but I'm just giving you a little background, Gary.
Oh, that sounds like a delightful beginning to your career. 7 months on a cruise ship. Having to hang out in Bermuda. Poor you.
Yeah, poor me. I know it was tough. And I will just tell you then that I actually, on that ship, met my first wife, and she ended up becoming my assistant. And then we worked together on the cruise ships and, all over the world. So that was it. And she was American, of course.
And that's nice. Out of traveling and doing shows all over the world, you were actually sharing a Arizona performance story with me before we started here about performing in Tuba City.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, this was a few years ago. It was kind of funny. I went up for several years. They have the Tuba City fair, and I think it's in October, and I was up there on stage. I had to do like 2 or 3 acts, mainly for the kids, and then this lady comes up to me and she says, oh, they've asked me to do a little number before your show. And I said, that's fine. I said, go ahead and do it. And I said, what's your name? She said, my name's Tina. And she gets up on the stage, and it's Tina Turner, and I hadn't recognized her, and she did Rolling Down the River, I think. So I can now say that Tina Turner opened for me, and I met her afterwards, and she was the nicest lady. She talked to my wife, who was working down in Phoenix, on the phone. Very charming. So but I have many stories about that. In fact, if I'm allowed to say this, I've actually just had my memoirs published, which have this story, and it's available on Amazon. It's called A Happy Dream, and it's the memoirs of a magic man. And that story is in the book, along with many others, including my connection where I performed for Prince William, who will be the future King of England, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so the name of the book again is A Happy Dream, Memoirs of a Magician?
Memoirs of a Magic Man, actually.
Memoirs of a Magic Man
Yep.
by Roger Blakiston.
Correct. It's actually Blakiston, but I'll forgive you for that.
Okay. Well, I'll try not to do it twice.
That's okay. That's okay. My humor.
All right. Well, do you have poems in your memoir as well?
Yeah, I do, actually. Virtually every chapter starts with a poem. So, yeah, I do. Would you like to hear one of them?
I would love to hear one.
Well, let's see. This is just randomly. Okay. Yeah, this is chapter 27, begins like this. Be the sunshine, be the shadow, be the chooser and the choice. Be the change and be the changer. Be the silence, be the voice. Be the waves and be the ocean, be the planets, stars and moon. Be the flame and be the ashes, be the music, be the tune. Be the love and be the lover, be the actor, be the play. Be the light and be the rainbow, be the nighttime, be the day. Be the trees and fields of plenty, be the wild flowers and the grass. Be the canyons and the mountains, be the mirror and the glass. Be the source and be the river, be the animals and birds, be the wind and be the seasons, be the poet, be the words. Feel the magic of creation, recognize we are all one, never ending or beginning, even when this course is done. Every piece of life connected as the jigsaw we complete. Holding hands we walk together down an ever-winding street. Twists and turns upon the journey, leading us to realms of joy. Homeward bound is our direction, then the jigsaw we destroy. For we now are in the blissful. Every lesson learned and past. No more need for trials and testing, just eternal spirit vast. Be the wisdom, be the holy, infinite in love and peace. Come together in one union, earthly conflicts then shall cease.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I hope our audience is inspired to be the one, be the wisdom. We've been listening to the poetry of Roger Blakiston. And we'll be cutting away for commercials and coming back in just a minute on the Poetry and Prose Project on Mellow Mountain Radio, 106.5 FM and 780 AM. Good morning. Welcome back to the Poetry and Prose Project, only on Mellow Mountain Radio, 106.5 FM and 780 AM. You chose a good morning to tune in. We're having a lot of fun here today. We've got poet and magician, Roger Blakiston. Did I say it right that time?
You said it brilliantly, yeah.
All right.
Better than I could do myself.
You were sharing some stories and some poetry from your memoir, A Happy Dream, Memoirs of a Magic Man, by Roger Blakiston. It's available on Amazon. And you've traveled the world, made your living as a magician and an entertainer, but we're here today to celebrate your poetry. The first time I heard you read was one of Christopher Fox Graham's poetry slams at Mary Fisher Theater, and you read some wonderful stuff, different from the other people up there, and I thought it would be so much fun to have a guest. Would you care to share another poem with our audience?
Well, actually, yeah, sure I will. And in fact, one of the ones, I believe I did this at the Poetry Slam, was simply called Bill. Very different to the last poem I read to you. I observed the old man sitting down beside a tree, a kindly face so full of grace, a book upon his knee. I paused and then approached him, intrigued from whence he came. I saw his eyes. He looked so wise. I asked him for his name. He said his name was William, but that I could call him Bill. In far-off days he wrote some plays on parchment with a quill. Being curious, I pointed to the book he grasped so tight, the cover worn, some pages torn, and then my face turned white. The tome he held was not in print, the words written by hand. Was I now seeing a cosmic being returned unto this land? The man then asked me if I wished to be or not to be, and straightway I knew the play, for Hamlet I could see. The word was etched upon the spine. I fell upon my knees. I was in awe at what I saw, then felt a gentle breeze. The trees were swaying as wind picked up. I heard a noise so loud I turned around, and on the ground had formed a massive crowd. I saw King Richard, Bolingbroke, and Julius Caesar too. Two people fought as power they sought, the taming of the shrew. "Lead on, Macduff!" I heard one shout as bagpipes played their tune. Amazing sight this precious night beneath the crescent moon. King Lear did howl. Othello, too, gave deeds they had performed, while Romeo put on a show and to his lover warmed. "Once more unto the breach, dear friends," I heard King Harry cry. A victory sought at Agincourt, he knew many would die. The drums were sounding in the air, the old man on his feet. This motley crowd stood still and bowed, then danced on to the beat. I woke up under starlit skies. The universe did gleam. Within this space had taken place a midsummer night's dream.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing that. I do remember you reading that up on the Mary Fisher stage. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it was a little different, that one, to much of my poetry, but yeah.
Now, you've been a professional magician for most of your adult life, but publishing poetry seems to be a little bit newer to your life.
Yeah, that's correct, Gary. In fact, I wrote my first poem. Well, really, I think I was probably about 10 years old when I first my very first poem. And then I wrote some poetry up into my sort of mid-20s. And then probably for 40 or 50 years, I wrote absolutely nothing. And then I went back and looked at some of my old poetry. And I discovered that I got probably about 70 poems. And I needed maybe another 20 to make up a book. So I wrote another 20 and published my first poetry book about 12 years ago, and it was called Forest of Song. And after that I thought, well, you know what, maybe I'm rather enjoying this poetry. I'd started a Forest of Song Facebook group. I had like 700 or 800 members of it, and they were all saying, well, keep on writing. So the story is that since then I wrote Forest of Song, and I wrote I have to think myself, Meadow of Verse came next. They're all something of something. So I had Meadow of Verse, I had Desert of Inspiration, I have River of Rhyme, and I have what's the last one called? I've forgotten what it's called. Universe of Whispers. That's right. So all those books have now been published, and they're all available on Amazon. And my poem is fairly traditional. You know, it's all rhyming poetry, but it's very varied, and you know, I get a lot of hits there. A lot of people seem to love them. You can go and check out the reviews on Amazon. But there we are.
Oh, well, I would say people definitely love your poetry. Your very first poetry slam, you took first place. That's a pretty stunning accomplishment.
I did, and there were all these kind of young kids there. They were all wonderful, great. I mean, they weren't all young, but I mean, a lot of them 20s, 30s, you know, and I was an old man here in my 70s. Give away my age now, but, you know, I got up there and I won the thing, yeah. So that was great, very nice, and thank you to a wonderful man, Christopher Fox Graham, who for many years has put this poetry slam on. He does such an incredible job.
Oh, and he makes sure that it's open and inclusive and supporting of everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally recommend, if you're in town for a poetry slam, go and catch it. There are beginners that get up there, but there are also an awful lot of talented people who get up on that stage and strut their stuff with poetry. It's a well-deserved night. Yeah, in fact, since you put together that first compilation, the Forest of Song, you've been pretty prolific, writing lots and lots of poems.
I think prolific is a good word, Gary. Yes, I certainly have. I write, just so you know, probably 2 or 3 poems a week on an average, and not all of them do I publish in my books, but most of them I do, and they just come. I don't know what it is, whether it's channeled or whatever, but and some of them have a fairly sort of spiritual slant to it, but by no means all of them. It's but some of them are, maybe rather than spiritual, I might use the word metaphysical. Yeah.
Well, the poet Gary Snyder, he recommended that everybody work on a poem every day, so that when real inspiration hit, you were sharp with your craft and could execute it and pull it off.
Right.
But if you weren't writing every day, then you tend to lose the technique a little bit. Well, would you like to share another poem with us?
Sure, I can. Let's just see what we've got here. This is actually the last poem in my book. So this is in chapter 30 of my my Happy Dream book.
Yep, Happy Dream, Memoirs of a Magic Man.
Yeah. Everything we've ever known has happened on this little earth. It's where each bush and flower has grown, all sickness, death, each life and birth. It's where great empires rose and fell, where Buddha sat 'neath Bodhi tree, where cavemen, warriors, kings would dwell, and Jesus walked upon the sea. It's here the bard wrote glorious plays, Da Vinci painted works of art, dictators rose in darkest days, where surgeons would transplant a heart. Egyptians, Romans, Greeks would rule, the battles raged and blood would flow. This little dot at times seemed cruel, yet nature gifted sunshine, snow. The thunder, lightning, hail and rain, the springtime, summer, autumn leaves. We'd see the moon both wax and wane and watch the mother as she grieves. Such great inventions to inspire, electric light and motor car. The men and women we admire, the humble and the movie star. Musicians, poets, actors all provide us with their wondrous works. The Beatles, Mozart to enthrall, and in the wings new talent lurks. Quaint villages and city crowds, wide oceans glimmer, sunbeams dance, where mountains pierce through floating clouds, and none of this seems merely chance. It's all we've got, and all we know, though from this place we gaze at stars and ponder in the night-time glow on lights that twinkle far from Mars. Could there be something more than this? We surely cannot be alone. Is there a heaven filled with bliss where perfect peace is on the throne? We know so little, yet so much, but one thing that is crystal clear is though we smell and sense and touch and feel emotion, love and fear, we are a tiny dot in space, a blimp upon the cosmic map. We call ourselves the human race, and one day we shall fill the gap. We'll understand the truth of all and travel back to former years, before the Big Bang and the fall, before the heartache and the tears. It's then that we shall wake from sleep and look out at a shining beam. This little dot lying in the deep was never real, but just a dream.
Oh, I like the twist on the ending there. That was sweet and ironic and beautiful, much like life itself.
Thank you so much.
Well, we're the Poetry and Prose Project. We're here on Mellow Mountain Radio, 106.5 FM and 780 AM. Our guest today is poet Roger Blakiston, and we'll be back for one more short segment after these messages. Good morning. Welcome back to the Poetry and Prose Project, only on Mellow Mountain Radio, 106.5 FM and 780 AM. I hope you're having a good Sunday morning. I certainly am. I'm your host, Gary Every, and our guest today is Roger Blakiston. He's a professional magician and entertainer, but he's gained some renown as a poet in recent years. I was wondering if maybe you could share one more poem for us, Roger.
One more poem, and this is really completely at random. Again, it just happens to be in my Happy Dream book, but many of these poems are also in some of my various other books, because this one combines my poetry and mainly my kind of life story, my memoirs over all these years. So this one is called The Unexpected. I am gently gliding down the corridor of change. The faded pictures on the walls I start to rearrange. Behind each painting I behold a different work of art, the hidden masterpieces that connect my soul and heart. The world I knew in lifetimes past once more revealed to me. The ancient wisdom now returns, the glorious age I see. I watch the 2 dimensions switch to 3, then on to 5, transported to another time when all of us would thrive. Connecting to these images, I know we are all one. I reach out to the great beyond, the journey has begun. I'm in the land of long ago, I dance on hills of gold. Surrounded by just love and light, my wondrous dreams unfold. Returning to those days of bliss before the dawn of fear, I feel a new earth in our sights, exciting times are near. I am awake, and this is real. Ahead I see a door. The corridor is closing in, and all that passed before. I turn the handle, open wide. Behind me is the throng, my kindred spirits holding hands while breaking into song. Together we all float on through, and on the other side, a magic kingdom welcomes us as we embrace the ride.
Oh, nice. Nice. So we've been talking today on the Poetry and Prose Project with Roger Blakiston. He's been reading from his book, Happy Dream, Memoirs of a Magic Man. He also has, and it's a story of his life as a magician and entertainer for several decades, as well as he's written several poetry books, Forest of Song, Meadow of Verse, River of Rhyme, and my favorite title, Universe of Whispers. Although Desert of Inspiration is a pretty good title, too. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's been a pleasure, Larry. Thank you so much. It's always nice to meet a fellow poet who's with such great talent.
Oh, it's been fun talking to you. I'm Gary Every. This is the Poetry and Prose Project. We're available only on Mellow Mountain 106.5 and 780 AM. Feel free to check out the website where all the pod shows of Poetry and Prose are archived. And I hope to hear you again next week. Thank you so much.